Welcome back for episode number 2 of my new YouTube channel. So as you see, it's between the posts. It's ready to go up in the air. The car is going to get some stuff finished on the front, the top, and the bottom side of it. Plus it might even get a new set of shoes. Depends on how it behaves. So we got a lot to do yet. Hopefully it'll fit in one more episode instead of 2 more episodes. But we're going to work on the front of the motor first. We're going to put the fuel tank in, the drive for the fuel pump, the alternator belt, all that stuff. Get all that put in, and then I'll decide where I'm going to go from there. But welcome back for number 2, and try to keep up. Super accurate. It's just held in there with front motor mount bolt holes, so it's a little bit of sloppy. Slide that, see how it moves back and forth. I think it was hitting it, may not have been, but whatever. I need to set that gap anyway. So let me get a socket for that. I made all that drive and all that, the pulley, the spacer that's between the pulley and the crank trigger, and more importantly, it's a washer that actually holds the balancer on, but it serves as a big fat washer. In my experience, every washer that I ever use on there, 1/4 inch thick, it'll cup it. Well, this one's probably 1 inch thick, and the bolt that goes into the end of the crankshaft goes through it. It centers in the harmonic balancer, so it's the same size basically as a crank. It centers it in the balancer, acts as a big fat thick washer which will never cave in, and it also registers all of this pulley stuff on the front. Everything registers off of that, so it's really accurate and strong. Can't forget to tighten that crank trigger or that sensor back.
So, point at what you were talking about, you made.
It's inside, behind all that pulley stuff. So the pulley, there's a spacer, a pulley, and this drive for the fuel pump. All of that is registered and located off of that big washer that I'm talking about. Okay, I'm going to set that crank trigger gap by eye for right now. I'll set it with feeler gauges when I lift it up on the lift. That's about 20 thousandths there. I'm going to loosen it just a little bit just in case my crank trigger of this wheel stuff wasn't exactly right. That way it wouldn't run a tooth into it and waste $100 and something sensor. I guess 100 and something, might be 200 and something, I'm not sure. So once that's really tightened down like that, I'll adjust it with the actual sensor adjustment. But before I go any further, let's put the fuel pump belt on, because I'm going to be starting it on methanol. I can't do that. Let's put the water pump belt on first. I'll probably have to loosen that because I didn't loosen that to take it out. I just took it apart. I need a 9/16 wrench. I just saw it on the floor. Again, a bunch of homemade stuff. If you question the backwards running alternator, just know that this particular car's got 1 on 10,000 miles. And I run that belt super tight because being just a little V-belt, if it's not tight like a fiddle string, it squeals. That's almost a high E note. I'm going to lower it down to an A note. That's more like it. Don't want to put any more load on the water pump or the front main bearing than I have to, but it's, like I say, it's never been a problem. Now I can put the fuel pump belt on. I used to drive a vacuum pump up here off of that same pulley. It worked great, except the vacuum pump won't keep up with this engine, so I just took it off. Now here's something that, since I've lowered this fuel filter 4 inches, I've never put this together. This thing here, I've got it slotted, this brace. It works perfect. Okay. I don't like that belt super tight, and I run it a lot looser than a person would think it should be, maybe. But it works fine. Let's see, I was trying to get used to the feel of this bracket here. I'm going to loosen this 5/16. I have a screwdriver right here, I'll use it for now. I just want to get the pressure off of it and feel this. See, it swings nice and easy when that's not under pressure. Because it was 4 inches higher, it probably mounted just a little bit different. It's probably pulling a little bind on this. So when I do this every time, I may just loosen that up. I need my 9/16. Now I can see there's a little bit of gap behind that, so it's putting a little bit of pressure. It's not a problem. It's very thin material. It just stabilizes that tall filter a little bit, because I worry about vibration cracking these AN fittings. And we ran it for a long time without anything, and it never cracked or leaked. But it's not the stuff that doesn't break that you're concerned with. It's the stuff that does break, and it stuff will eventually break. So there we go. There's the crank trigger, the front pulley, the belts. I think we're so I've got all of that stuff tightened up, lined up. We got the throttle hooked up, got all the hoses hooked up that I can, the stuff on the elbow and the throttle body. So that is done. I even made the little bracket to hook the button for adjusting valves up. Now I'm going to put the front pulley on, put the belt for the fuel pump, and that's also the crank trigger. So I'm going to do that before I put the fuel tank in, because it's got a little bit more room without the fuel tank. So I'm going to go over there and get that. Let's put it on, then we can put the fuel tank in. Then I can start working on some plumbing. I got to make the lines that come from the fuel rails at the back. That fitting the line will run underneath, come up here, and hook to the fuel tank, to the regulator. When we get the fuel tank in, I'll have to measure that and work it out. But the top is almost buttoned up. I've got the turbos, the wastegates, the oil lines to the turbos. I don't have the drains because I'll do that on the lift. This is the wire for the pressure sensor on the regulator. I'll do that after the tank's in. So I'll go over here and get the crank trigger, pulley, drive, etc. I've got that marked. You know what? How do I know? I used to have it marked, but I've cleaned it and done some work on the harmonic balancer, so I'm not sure that I've still got a mark on there. Let me get my specs and see if I can find a mark. I think I'm going to jack it up and lay underneath because the radiator's kind of in the way. I could do this when I put it on the lift, but there's more room without the fuel tank, and I'm going to put the fuel tank in now. So I'm just going to lay on the floor and do it. Let me find a jack stand, because I know you guys there's a lot of OSHA people out there. A lot of people that have been conditioned to think that everybody's dumb except OSHA. Okay, so I'm only putting one, but that'll keep it from crushing me. So I'm gonna go down. Man, I can have this mark. It'll fit 6 different ways. There's some wear on the balancer is what I'm looking at. There's 2 spots right there because I've used that before too. This is all kind of homemade stuff here. Okay, I see those 2 spots. So those 2 bolts go like this. Make sure I didn't move it when I lifted it up. Okay, it's between those 2 spots right there, just like that. I'm going to start it and I'm going to get underneath there and look up before I tighten it up too tight. If I can even get it started. Kind of like that bolt to start. Well, why won't it start? Any one of you start, right? I've got something not in the right place. It should be right there. Okay, when it's right, it goes right in. Okay, so what I want to do is try to pull that back. And I'll pull it off though. Those marks. Yep. That should be right on. Now, I'm going to start those by hand. I'm going to get my electric ratchet. You know what I see? Part of the problem is hitting my crank trigger. So I need to, sensor, crank trigger sensor. So I need to loosen that up because it moves. It's not super. I'm going to get my electric ratchet. You know what I see? Part of the problem is hitting my crank trigger. So I need to, sensor, crank trigger sensor. So I need to loosen that up because it moves. It's not super accurate, it's just held in there with front motor mount bolt holes. So it's a little bit of sloppy. Loosen those. Slide that, see how it moves back and forth. I think it was hitting it, may not have been, but whatever. I need to set that gap anyway. So let me get a socket for that. I made all that drive and all that, the pulley, the spacer that's between the pulley and the crank trigger, and more importantly, it's a washer that actually holds the balancer on, but it serves as a big fat washer. In my experience, every washer that I ever use on there, 1/4 inch thick, it'll cup it. Well, this one's probably 1 inch thick, and the bolt that goes into the end of the crankshaft goes through it. It centers in the harmonic balancer, so it's the same size basically as a crank. It centers it in the balancer, acts as a big fat thick washer which will never cave in, and it also registers all of this pulley stuff on the front. Everything registers off of that, so it's really accurate and strong. Can't forget to tighten that crank trigger or that sensor back.
So, point at what you were talking about you made.
It's inside, behind all that pulley stuff. So the pulley, there's a spacer, a pulley, and this drive for the fuel pump. All of that is registered and located off of that big washer that I'm talking about. Okay, I'm going to set that crank trigger gap by eye for right now. I'll set it with feeler gauges when I lift it up on the lift. That's about 20 thousandths there. I'm going to loosen it just a little bit, just in case my crank trigger of this wheel stuff wasn't exactly right. That way it wouldn't run a tooth into it and waste $100 and something sensor. I guess 100 and something, might be 200 and something, I'm not sure. So once that's really tightened down like that, I'll adjust it with the actual sensor adjustment. But before I go any further, let's put the fuel pump belt on, because I'm going to be starting it on methanol. I can't do that. Let's put the water pump belt on first. Pretty sure it came out. Nope. I'll probably have to loosen that because I didn't loosen that to take it out. I just took it apart. I need a 9/16 wrench. I just saw it on the floor under your foot. Again, a bunch of homemade stuff. And if you question the backwards running alternator, just know that this particular car's got going on 10,000 miles on it. And the same alternator. Okay. And I run that belt super tight, because being just a little V-belt, if it's not tight like a fiddle string, it squeals. That's almost a high E note. I'm going to lower it down to an A note. That's more like it. Don't want to put any more load on the water pump or the front main bearing than I have to, but it's, like I say, it's never been a problem. Now I can put the fuel pump belt on. I used to drive a vacuum pump up here off of that same pulley. It worked great, except the vacuum pump won't keep up with this engine, so I just took it off. Now here's something that, since I've lowered this fuel filter 4 inches, I've never put this together. This thing here, I've got it slotted, this brace, and it works perfect. Okay. I don't like that belt super tight, and I've run it a lot looser than a person would think it should be, maybe, but it works fine. Let's see, I was trying to get used to the feel of this bracket here. I'm going to loosen this 5/16. I have a screwdriver right here, I'll use it for now. I just want to get the pressure off of it and feel this. See, it swings nice and easy when that's not under pressure. Because it was 4 inches higher, it probably mounted just a little bit different. It's probably pulling a little bind on this. So when I do this every time, I may just loosen that up. I need my 9/16. Now I can see there's a little bit of gap behind that, so it's putting a little bit of pressure. It's not a problem. It's very thin material. It just stabilizes that tall filter a little bit, because I worry about vibration cracking these AN fittings. And we ran it for a long time without anything, and it never cracked or leaked. But it's not the stuff that doesn't break that you're concerned with. It's the stuff that does break, and it stuff will eventually break. So there we go. There's the crank trigger, the front pulley, the belt. I think we're ready to put the fuel tank in. I just had to helicoil one of my radiator mounts. It's a aluminum puck that I welded on the radiator to holds everything. It holds the radiator on, it holds these puke tanks on, it holds the fuel tank in. And I don't know when, but sometime I've stripped a bolt, and I just helicoiled it, making sure that it lines up, and it does, or screws in, and it does. So where's my other puke tank? I have puke tanks for puke tanks. Literally redundancy, because with a old-fashioned wet sump oiling system, these things tend to puke a lot, especially at the top of the track. Valve cover will be full of oil from the run. Pull the chutes and hit the brakes, and I mean the G-force is so strong. All that oil goes forward. No matter what I was doing, puke tanks had filled it up, it'd come out these breathers, it just wet the inside of the front end down. It got to be so annoying, I'd have to clean that up. I tried multiple different things. I had them in the frame rails. You see that one back there. I've got inlets down here and back here, and then I had these breathers back there. Well, it would put so much in there that it would come out those breathers. So almost everything I tried was, it just didn't work. And I finally got it solved. I'll show you in a minute here. But I have puke tanks for puke tanks. So this is the fuel tank, kind of a Frankenstein, but it works so good. I do have to sandwich it between the puke tank over here and over on the other side and the radiator support. So I'm going to stick it in here. I look at the bottom and get my peg installed. This side goes in here like that. Let me see if I can get these bolts lined up without too much hassle. Perfect. Now, that seems awfully long, but I've used it in the past, so I guess it's okay. Okay, I should be able to tighten that up. Now what's the deal? That's the one that I just helicoiled. Something's not happy. May have to loosen this side. I just thought I had that started, but I evidently didn't. I may have to have a longer bolt too. Okay. All right. There's 2 bolts on the bottom that I'll put in when I put it up on the lift. Hook up my pressure sensor so we can log and monitor how much pressure's in the radiator. If a head gasket starts lifting, head starts lifting or a gasket starts, and it actually did, we've been noticing the pressure on the radiators increasing. Sometimes it's a little bit of a concern. That was a head gasket issue. I've gone to a thicker gasket. I think it'll solve it. But you can actually know how much pressure's in the radiator instead of just accidentally blowing the cap off and wetting the track down. It does have a puke tank. Everything on this got puke tank, but this one pukes into the frame rail and goes back here. And so it's got that whole capacity right there, that frame rail, which it never gets to that point. Hasn't yet anyway. So now, show you what I've done for. This is kind of cool. I like it a lot. Let me get some hoses. I have to figure out which hose is for what, because there's so many. Some of them are the same, both sides, some of them are different. So that valve cover hose over there is longer than this one over here. So that would be like this. And I'm gonna be, this is all changed here, so things may not fit exactly like they used to. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this upper radiator hose while I'm here so I don't forget it. Okay, let's see, this one here. These are quick connects, and that goes in there, and it vents into this. So this whole tank used to be a fuel tank, and it's way more capacity than you need. I think it's 8 gallons. But it just, I built it to fit and look right. If I made a little short tank, it would have looked wrong. And I didn't care to have a little extra capacity in case we needed to make a back-to-back run, but we never do. So what I did was cut this off. You can see where I cut the tank. It was nice and smooth, it looked good. Then I sawed the ends off, and I put a bulkhead in here, so only the center part is fuel now. Each one of these on the sides is a puke tank. And so when the oil's in the valve cover, you pull the chutes and it slams forward, it goes into this. Well, at the bottom and the lowest point, it drains back after you stop into the valve cover. That's what this is. And it works fantastic. But everything that, in order to make that work, it has to have a vent, just like everything else. Everything's got a vent somewhere. So to keep it from coming out of the vent, since I already had these tanks on the side, I just left them. So I've got these. I don't remember if they're the same or not. I think they are. They appear to be. So just to be double down safe, this tank now vents through here. And now at the track, I drain my puke tanks after each run, but I never have anything in here. So it's really just a vent tank. This frame rail is for methanol. So the methanol tank vents into this, because when you're pulling as much fuel as you do with these things, you have to have equally that much air being able to enter the tank, or you'll suck a vacuum in it, which could cause all kinds of issues. So this big 12 comes out of the center methanol part. I don't think I loosened that, but I'm going to double check it because I don't want to leak. Oh, I did. So it always pays to check everything. Okay. So now the center tank pukes into this frame rail. But just to be safe, because I got to thinking about it, if the car was ever upside down, I don't want fuel, if the car is upside down, to be able to drip out of the vent and start a fire. I mean, you never know, because if it's upside down, the front's probably smashed anyway. But just to be safe, what I do is I vent it into this frame rail, because I already had this set up. And then I come back here, well, I vent it into another tank. And the idea is that if the car was upside down, that outlet, it's actually on the side of it, You can see this hose, it vents right here. So this is really just a vent can. It's way down, it comes all the way to the bottom of the car. So if the car was upside down, that hose is the highest, basically the highest thing on the car. Car would be down here. So fuel in that tank would never come out of that hose if it was upside down. That's because it's my kid driving. It adds a whole 2 pounds. I'm gonna do it. It's safe. It helps makes it safer. So there's all the hoses on this side. It looks like a lot, but it really isn't a big deal. Now, do this hose on this side. The bad part is I gotta take that valve cover off over there. Find top dead center and set my distributor back here. I gotta put it at, I think it's 40 degrees before top dead center on number 1, but I'll do that later. So that one's on. Same exact thing over here. This puke tank for this valve cover works just like that one over there. And that tank is just thin wall aluminum tubing. It weighs nothing. I just cleaned them both on the outside. Just that one had bug splatters on it from bugs coming through the grill. They don't weigh anything. Okay. So now I can build my fuel lines. Let's see what we have. New fittings and new hose, because I didn't know if these would be long enough, but I'm going to check it just to see. Boy, that O-ring's loose. All right, and it needed to be, so this is the way it's going to run. It's going to go right there, but you can see it's going to go into this regulator, and that's going to be at least 3 inches short. So it was necessary to get new line. So that's the way the fuel line is going to work. What it does is the big supply line out of the bottom of the tank goes in the bottom of the mechanical pump, pumps the fuel up through the filter into each big rail, out of each rail, back into this regulator, out of the regulator through this big number 10, back into the tank. So all of that race side is just right here. There's no big secret to it. It's just easy stuff. The street side, I've got to put a regulator here. This, I'm going to put pressure in one side or the other. It goes through, it's going to loop. It just loops in the back, comes out the other one. It'll go through the regulator and back to the fuel tank in the back. There's a filter. I got to put a filter under the floor. That's pretty much it. I'm going to put the lower radiator hose on while I'm here, and then we're ready to put it on the lift. I'm getting ready to make those fuel lines I was talking about out of this. I love this stuff. It's got braided stainless inside, but the black housing outside is PTFE. I pretty much won't use a hose anymore unless it's PTFE. But one of the things I want to do here, you can see with these 180 fittings, and I've ran these ever since we've done this. If I put it on this fuel rail, I want to run them down underneath here to the front. It basically aims right into the injector. So that just won't clear. I'd have to swing it out like this and run it beside the injectors and the wiring, and I don't want that. I mean, if I have to take the injector plug loose, that's just a pain. So I needed to alter that fitting just a little bit. I just came up with a really good way to do it. I thought I'd share it with you. So you can see the difference. This one was just like this. I just bent it. But it's, you know, it's hard to bend that tubing. I've tried to do this before. But now, when I put this one on, when I build this hose, it will go down under. All right, so when it's hanging down like that, the fuel line will now run under the injector plug. It angles down and it'll come right underneath. It'll clear it perfectly. And it can run underneath here above the valve cover where I can still get it off. It's gonna come up and hook to that fitting. But let's bend one just in case you ever have to do this for anything. You probably won't. We're kind of the only ones that ever do this weird stuff. So I put a fitting in the end because if you just try to bend, like if I put 2 sockets on there and try to pull it apart, one, you can damage this end. This has got an O-ring in it. You don't want to bend this part behind here. You could make that O-ring leak or the thing wouldn't spin. Same deal down here. If you just put a socket on it and an extension and tried to bend it, you might make it work, but it could damage the flare that's inside of that AN fitting. If you do that, you're going to have a leak. So I put this fitting in here just to hold it, to support it. And this one I want to push down here on this part of it, not out here on this part. So I was thinking about my porta-power, and I didn't know if it would fit in there or not, but it does. So put that right there. Put it in a little bit further. Like that. It's pushing on the parts that matter, the strength. I don't want to bust it. I don't want to go too far. It just needs that little bit of an angle change. So that's perfect. Now instead of a 180, it's a 65 or something. So that gives it just enough clearance, and that worked really good. I didn't have to beat on it. I didn't have to do anything weird. It just unbent it. Now I'm going to make the hoses. As much as I love that black hose, I do hate having to cut it. Cutting is super easy. I've got a pair of snips that I cut it with, but I gotta unwrap that black end off of there, get the black off of it. So I'm gonna make these hoses and I'll come back and put. All right, it's ready to crank. I think it's ready to start. I've gone over everything. We didn't come back and show you stuff last night because it's boring. It's just hooking up hoses and lines like the supply line, and these are valve cover drain back hoses that come to the front of the pan. Then my turbo feed line, and I've got an accumulator down here for the oil. So I didn't show you that stuff, but I put a filter in for the street drive back here where it's between a couple brackets, so it's nice and solid. Bolted the torque converter up, the Pro Torque converter, which is so awesome. And just the basic stuff. It's ready to start. We'll let it down. You can look at the top of it. We'll go over what I've done up there to just finish it up. And I think we can crank it. I primed the fuel pump, which I've never done before, but I put a belt on it and used a drill and spun the fuel pump because the system was dry, and I don't like just cranking until it builds pressure. That's just hard on the starter. So that worked really good. I had Debbie look at the gauge while I was doing it, and it had 100 pounds of pressure. So the fuel is primed. It's full of water. It's full of oil. Debbie got the wheels cleaned. I gotta torque all those lug nuts when we let it down before we go in the trailer anyway. We'll let it down, go over it while you're watching so I can make sure that I haven't forgot anything, which I've gone over it a couple times. I go over it constantly, mentally. We sent and drank Coke and vodka pepper, whatever. Take a break multiple times a day while I'm sitting there. I'm just thinking, what have I not done? What did I not tighten? One of the things that I'm really, really firm about is, especially if you've got help in your shop, if you put that bolt in and you think you're going to come back and tighten it later, you'll forget it. If you put a bolt in, I don't care if you're taking it off, in 5 minutes, tighten the bolt, whatever it is. I mean, we've done this so much, and loose bolts or loose fittings is so dangerous. If you're putting it on, that means it needs to be on there. Tighten it up like it's going to stay there, even if you know it's not going to, because you will forget. There's so many bolts and so many fittings on this thing. There's hundreds of things that you have to tighten. It's just really easy to forget something. So, not that I still can't, I might have, and it's especially bad for fittings. I'm bad to, put a fitting on and think that it's, because you got to take, especially when I'm building lines like this, you think that you got them tight, but you remember once they start leaking that you never did tighten that down. So that's the street side. The race side I know is not leaking because we've already put 100 psi on it. But let me just go over them just to make sure. I don't like tightening new AN fittings max tight. That one was just a little bit on the looser side because they're flares, and you're putting them on a you know, inverted flare type deal, even though it's an AN line, and they have to seat, and if you over tighten them, they seat once, and then every time after that they can drip a little bit. So I want them tight, but I don't just put them as tight as they can possibly go. I think that we're ready to see what happens here. I've got fuel in it, I've got oil in it, I've got water in it, spark plugs are in. I hate doing this by myself. I like it when Alex is here because I can't wash the front, crank it, and work the throttle all at the same time. Let's see what happens. Ignition's on. Was low, it scared me, but it did build up. Let me set the idle up just a little bit. Oil pressure built up to 93 pounds while it was sitting there. It started out a little bit slow, like 20 to 30. Uneventful startup. Sometimes it's not so easy, even though it should be. But I had everything pretty well worked out. You know, like I said, I had that fuel system primed. What I'm going to do now is have lunch and then look it over for leaks as it cools down, which I don't see anything apparent. But that was really uneventful. That was really nice. When I killed it there, it had 94 pounds of pressure. It won't stay that because as that oil heats up, it's a thick oil, it will thin out and it'll lose pressure. You know, that's to be expected. I'm not worried about that. But I don't know what it'll do. Historically, that's what would happen. This new Titan oil pump could have so much volume. It's got a relief set in there. And I thought they set it at 100, but when they asked us, I think we said somewhere around 80. But it was pumping 100 by the drill. So I don't know. And that was also on a mechanical gauge. So there is a chance that because it pumps so much volume, as the oil heats up, it may make up for the clearances and the viscosity of the oil changing. So that's yet to be seen. We'll see how it works and what the numbers are going down track. But right now it's bitching. Everything looks really good. It started really good. So I'm gonna look it over. I think we're in good shape. We'll see you at drag week.